And then the lights go out, and our main event is Jon Moxley, Claudio Castagnoli, the Young Bucks, and Gabe Kidd against Will Ospreay, Kenny Omega, Kota Ibushi, Hiroshi Tanahashi, and Darby Allin in the lights out steel cage match. Some interesting notes here. This is the first time Tanahashi and Ibushi have been in a match together since September of 2021, and the first for Tanahashi and Omega since their Wrestle Kingdom match in January of 2019. So some interesting ones there.
Lifetime ago. Wow.
They explain that much like Ospreay, Kenny Omega too has not been medically cleared for this unsanctioned match. And he does come out to Battle Cry, and not the theme that people have seemed to have hated in his return over the past year.
They might be just saving that for his big singles title defenses. Yeah, to make people really angry.
So the babyfaces just come out one by one, and the final one on the babyface side is Will Ospreay. And we go to this video, and it shows Will, and we go to old backyard footage, wrestling at York Hall, going to New Japan, and this is narrated by Alex Windsor, stating that no opponent is too strong if your heart doesn't quit. You chase the impossible, and if you're not afraid of what's next, then neither am I. And this is like the first time they've actually acknowledged this relationship like very openly on AEW programming. This video was incredible. And then Ospreay comes out and just got the hero's reception that you would have expected. And he comes out and climbs to the top of the cage. And it was this spectacular visual for this entrance for Will Ospreay, who finally got to wrestle at the O2 Arena. And boy, did he take it easy in this cage match for a guy facing neck surgery.
Yeah. I mean, this was a very special entrance for what felt like the main character of this entire show. And to me, I thought it felt extra sentimental knowing that he was probably going to go away for a while and that he would even be a question mark for next year's Wembley show. So this might have been the last big Will Ospreay match we were going to see for quite some time. Certainly for this UK crowd.
Then the Death Riders make their entrance, but the Young Bucks come out, and their previous EVP theme is playing until we get a record scratch. And they had requested their old music, and I feel that this production team, they were running around. They're like, "Hey, Excalibur, we forgot what's their old theme music." Well, back in Reseda, they used to come out to Bop. So Tony Khan licensed Hanson for this big Forbidden Door show as they came out to Bop, and this crowd loved this song almost as much as Kenny Omega loved this song as he was dancing in the ring. You've never seen a man flip a switch as much as Kenny Omega pre-match and when this bell rings.
I think Hanson should write his next theme music. Forget this Final Fantasy dude.
I feel you could have got these three to perform this live if they had so wanted to. This was great. I mean, we say every week of like these entrances are just so well thought out, and they keep just upping them to such a degree. I thought this was great.
Oh, it's been so much fun just seeing them play with this gimmick and spending a good amount of money here for it too.
They also, on their graphic, they specifically plugged Being the Elite on YouTube, which they did put up a very short video on Saturday, just basically renaming the EVP trigger back to the BTE trigger. They did it. It was a funny video, but it does make you wonder if they're going to start to be focusing back again on Being the Elite, and it was used here for their graphic.
I would hope so. Maybe one of the criticisms I think of the Bucks is like they became EVPs. And that completely took away, I think, their grassroots appeal, which kind of made them like the king of the indies and made them so lovable in the first place.
But now these characters, they're playing the grassroots version of themselves now.
Exactly. Except we're supposed to hate them, of course, because we still remember them as EVPs and all they did. But now this is the perfect excuse to bring back the self-recorded, self-edited, be as shitty as possible with your iMovie like graphics, type of BTE. I very much look forward to that.
All right, we go into this match, and I'm just going to state that these Forbidden Door notes, there were essays I wrote in university that were not as long as these notes for Forbidden Door. Okay?
I want to thank you, just on behalf of all of us. I know how taxing it is to do play-by-play for these sort of things.
Well, this match was a breeze. I mean, this was just, a couple lines here and there.
Oh, okay.
So some of the highlights, we're not going through everything here, but we do get a showdown between the Golden Lovers and the Young Bucks, Wei Ting's 2018 match of the year. And they briefly battle each other. And then Omega and Ibushi even attempted the cross slash.
They did, and successfully. Looked good, man. The last time they did this, the timing wasn't so great, but
they ran at like a gingerly pace, but in doing so, they were able to hit the move much better than they did. Yeah, I do remember some of those latter attempts where it's a tougher move than it may be if you're describing it, of just, being in sync with one another.
Incredibly difficult. And I mean, again, I think it to me, okay, I thought this was another very solid performance from Kota Ibushi. Like, we might be like still thinking about like him at his worst, but this was a very capable level of Kota Ibushi. Yeah.
Listen, if there is one man that I am going to be giving all the credit to for powering through this, it is the president of New Japan Pro Wrestling, because for 98% of this, I was just asking myself, why was this poor man booked in this match? And the finish was why. And they made this final appearance in London be about Hiroshi Tanahashi. And dude, this guy, I don't care what you want to say, this dude also did the G1, much like a lot of these other performers, like a decade or more his junior. Mm-hmm. And this dude gave everything he possibly could. And it is a very low amount in comparison, but I thought this guy really hustled, and his knees are shot. He's probably got just a laundry list of problems. And he went out here for the 32 minutes and did the most that his body was capable of.
No, absolutely. Like in seeing what he's still able to do in the G1, I mean, he could still do his signature maneuvers. And yes, the high fly flows might not be as high as they used to, but they still look like a high fly flow. And I think, if anything, this entire crowd, being, I think, as smart as they were, recognized his limitations, and we're still treating him with the reverence and seeing the effort in spite of, how slowly he was moving. And it made him suddenly the most sympathetic person in the entire match, especially when they were crafting spots around him, like having the 5 members of the Death Riders team and the Bucks team gathered around him and having Tanahashi fight off that traffic. I thought it was very compelling.
We've got so much going on at the Post Wrestling Cafe. $6 a month gets you access to the full Post Wrestling experience. The newest Rewind Away will be going back to 2001 as we will review King of the Ring, featuring Edge winning the crown and Kurt Angle taking on Shane McMahon in a very well-remembered street fight. Plus, it's all of our reviews of the WWE Unreal series on Netflix, XL editions of Rewind to Raw, Dynamite, and SmackDown, and so much more. All of it can be yours at postwrestlingcafe.com. So Nick gets the bag of weapons that the production member had secured for them, and it's revealed as a bag full of gummy bears. And Moxley is like, what the hell, guys? You had one job. And Omega tries a drop toe hold, and Nick is fighting the drop toe hold, and Tanahashi sling blades Nick, who takes the most ungodly head spike on top of these gummy bears, and this place went insane. There's a definite lesson to be learned there when this got as big a reaction than if they had broken glass here. And then Matt gets a mouthful of the gummies as Ibushi kicks him in the face afterwards. So the audience enjoyed this spot.
I loved it. I mean, I'm sure there are people that might have been upset over it, but like, I always have time for the Bucks, especially in this incarnation of their characters. After
seeing the Brody King spot, I was saying let's make this the staple of these matches.
Let's
get marshmallows.
Out,
okay. I want like sure. Oreo cookies and I don't know whatever else you can conjure up. And if you were complaining about this spot, they gave you more than enough violence afterwards, because then a ladder is brought in. That would split open Ospreay's head. And Darby Allin was in this match. Did you notice?
I noticed he was probably the person responsible for most of the reason why this might have been a lights out match. Yeah.
So I didn't see the exact blow, but they note he's bleeding from the ear. And he definitely was bleeding from the ear. More to come on that. Claudio takes Darby, and it's like we talked about, this guy hasn't had a match since December, and it's almost like in putting this match together, he's like, how many bumps did I miss out on over the last 8 months that I could just condense into this one match? Hey, Claudio, what if you military pressed me from the ring and send me into the cage and my lifeless body will just fall 5 feet to the floor and just thump into lifelessness? And Claudio was more than willing to engage in this spot. This is when they beat down Tanahashi, and the guy tries to fight them off. This was like the ultimate babyface spot. He's just won't go down from these 5 guys who are all ganging up on him, and then ends. Excalibur calls this by Moxley. That was either a paradigm shift. Maybe it was just a DDT because, dude, Tanahashi's feet were not leaving the ground for this paradigm shift. So we'll call it a DDT, but I think it was intended to be a paradigm shift. Then, in the spot that one day I will be on my deathbed and I'm going to be thinking, what were the highs and lows of covering this bizarre industry? And this image is probably going to come to mind for me because it's going to be seared into the recesses of my mind. Darby is duct taped to the chair. Moxley gets a fork and he starts stabbing the ear. And it's zoomed out. I'm like, okay, whatever. It's a nice like sight gag. No, then we zoom in. He is carving at this thing like he is trying to pierce more holes into the guy's ear. It's draining blood. And in the words that only Jim Ross could summarize, that is just gruesome. This was so gross, dude. It was just, I had no stomach for this. I was glad I had not ate prior to this.
Yeah, and you have a thing about ears, right? Like dating
ears and eyes, I'm not a big fan of. Yeah, the Jeff Hardy thing was, dude, this was a walk in the park. Jeff Hardy was a walk in the park in comparison to this. This was just, this was absolutely disgusting. But
gross. Yeah, gross.
I take the gummy bears over this. Persecute me.
You knew something like this was coming. I mean, it's John.
No,
Moxley.
I did not.
Well, it's John Moxley. It's Darby Allin inside.
Do you know what we're going to get in this eventual match between these two? This is the sampler.
I shudder to think where they could stick a fork into on a person's body.
So Darby is just dead. Yuta and Shafir are busy putting together a table, a stack of tables on the floor just to leave there. So everyone knows this match ain't finishing until people plunge to their death through these tables. There's a barbed wire table that is introduced. And Tanahashi, for all we want to talk about this guy's knees and the negative aspect to them, we did find a positive because they are the ultimate defense mechanism to a double team Irish whip because he cannot run himself into the corner and therefore saved himself from this barbed wire board. And then tries to drive Moxley's face into it. Tanahashi takes a neutralizer and BTE trigger when Ospreay recovers and he is in for the save. Kenny Omega hits the Terminator dive. And after hitting it, we cut to this extreme close-up of Marina Shafir right as she just screams, "Fuck you, Kenny." That part was as memorable a part of this match for me as anything else. I'd rather remember this than the ear spot, to be quite honest. This was such a perfect cut to Marina Shafir.
If she was in the match, this would have been disqualified, this match.
It would have been over if they were following the letter of the law. But this is an overseas show. I don't know if the British Board of Control would be looking at this, or the boxing control. Tanahashi climbs the ladder. Never a good idea. So Ospreay and Ibushi talk this guy off the ledge. They're like, no, please, Tanahashi, don't.
They were very, again, aware and treating Tanahashi as if he was Sting, basically.
This is crazy grandpa who wants to play with the kids.
Which is not how New Japan will be framing him in any of his matches for the rest of the year.
So then, after all of this concern for Tanahashi, who could do damage climbing a ladder, Ospreay then just scales to the top of the cage and casually hits a moonsault to everybody on the floor.
Did they give us a reason for why the heel suddenly just all ran over to catch the best
explanation was Excalibur, or one of them, said, well, we thought he was going to leap onto Wheeler Yuta on the floor, but he ended up none of them were expecting him to moonsault back into the ring.
How convenient. And how convenient for Will Ospreay that all the heels just happened to crowd around.
This was a very manufactured spot, but the audience went insane for it, and it looked pretty spectacular. Kid and Omega are left into the ring to replay their feud from earlier this year, and we just get into a procession of spots. Darby is back to life, and Moxley and Omega have their showdown. There's a V-trigger, one-winged angel that connects, but the save is made. Yuta then helps Moxley climb out of the cage. Darby follows, grabbing Yuta on top, bites him, and sends Yuta plunging off the cage through a desk. That was the end of Yuta. And then he chased after Moxley, and he puts Moxley on the floor onto the table structure, climbs the cage, but Marina pulls Moxley away. Gabe appears, low blows Darby from behind, and the whole crowd is chanting, "Please don't die," because we have just seen this guy mangle his ear for the art, and what are they going to do on top of a cage? And Kid applies a choke. Darby rakes the eyes and sends both men off the top of the cage through these 6 stacked tables.
Oh, I mean, I don't know how much experience Gabe Kidd has had doing these sort of spots, wrestling in New Japan, coming up from the dojo and everything. But I'm sure that was very scary for him to do. And Darby Allin, for him, that's just like, this is just another, it's like walking for him.
To be honest, when they were on the top of this cage, the outcome to me was on the lower end of what I expected them to do. I was like, okay, that was like manageable. You had at least 6 tables to land on. So
yeah, it did look like a tougher landing for Kid, but I mean, all things considered, I'm sure, like for a guy who just was out of the G1 because he hyperextended his knee, this was quite the way to come back.
Yeah, I'd love to see his physio instructor take a look at this. So they hit the golden trigger onto Nick, and then a hidden blade is delivered to Matt, and Kenny lifts up Matt as Will comes off the top with a hidden blade into the one-winged angel, followed by the high fly flow, and it's Tanahashi pinning Matt Jackson in 32 and a half minutes as the baby faces reign supreme. And for Tanahashi gutting his way through this, like I thought this was like a really cool feel-good moment at the end to really make this a big deal that it was Tanahashi's last time in London, and here he is at a sold-out O2 arena, and they let him be kind of the star of the match, and it kind of underscored the Forbidden Door theme when they could have gone in so many other directions. Like they could have done like Will getting the win when they were going to do this heavy heat angle. They could have furthered one of their stars, but instead they made this main event. They let Tanahashi get the big win. So I thought this really delivered strongly. And watching this in a way where I think you can tell like a bunch of these guys, I'm sure were operating at less than 100% for varying degrees of it all.
I couldn't tell, honestly. Like I felt like everybody was like very, very good and at least, did their sort of expected part of like what I would expect Kenny Omega get to look like in this match, or certainly a Will Ospreay in this match. I thought, first of all, like spectacle, I think is the only way you could describe something like this. And at a time when you're still charging however much you're charging for these pay-per-views against the competition that is trying to underprice you, you need as much spectacle as you can for these shows. This was a main event that was well worthy of their pay-per-view pricing, and that's the type of home run that Tony has to hit for every single one of these shows. This delivered that. My first thought coming out of it was that I hope nobody was hurt too badly, because there's a price to be paid, and it's not just however much they're charging. These performers have to make sure that you guys are getting your money's worth, and I thought they all pulled it off very well. I love the way this cage looks, John. I mean,
this is the New Japan style one that when they've done the dog pound cage match, and I thought it really worked super, and it never felt overcrowded. They didn't even like other than Darby and Moxley, like they never left the cage area either. It like they had their chapters. They gave guys, like no one was there long enough that you were going to be like everyone got like their breaks during the match, and you could have your little focuses. Like no one to me felt like everyone got their shine. They got focused upon. No one to me like just was a background player that you never focused upon. And I think and just saying, like, if there was a case where several of these performers are like, we know what Ospreay's dealing with, we know what Tanahashi's dealing with Gabe Kidd. Like, this was structured in such a way that it was going to, like, rather than putting any of these guys in singles matches where they'd have that pressure to have to do a big time singles match, like this is kind of utilizing these people to hopefully like those strength and working around any ailments.
Yeah. I thought it ended up being a really great idea. I love this cage because it's different from their usual cage, which is still obscenely tall, but this allows for the essentially what this provided was like a version of a blood and guts atmosphere, but without the intervals and without maybe the double fence, double cage, I should say. And it adds just kind of another special attraction to the AEW pay-per-view calendar. I mean, in terms of size, this is essentially their version of a Hell in a Cell. But to have the multi-man person team aspect attached to it was just a lot of fun. Even taking the cage and the violence out of this, I thought the interactions between everybody here was still compelling enough on its own. Seeing this mix of legends here, no matter how injured, everybody I thought performed at a very high level. And like I said, Tanahashi, though he was the most broken of everybody, I thought they utilized that to their advantage by framing him as the most sympathetic person in this entire match. In terms of stunts, they completely delivered. And when I say they, I mean Darby Allin. Like he was basically the person you were relying on to fulfill the quota for almost everything, with the exception of that Osprey moonsault, which looked very strong. I'm sure, like I feel like others probably took some big spots here and there, but it was Darby that was taking the military press into the cage. He was the guy who took the ear spot, the duct tape body slam onto the chair, which I think was
Oh, this guy massacred himself in this match.
big dive at the end over the cage. Like I mean, this was a Darby Allin, Mick Foley type of match. Very satisfying overall, and a great way to highlight this main event, this pay-per-view.
Yeah, I thought like the last two matches, which was basically the last like 90 minutes or so of the show, were really, really solid. I thought like the two big matches overall we had our quibbles, like especially with the AEW title match, but I would say judging it as a whole and with this, I thought this was a really satisfying like 1-2 series of matches to close the show with. And then after Osprey, so they did set this up pretty well. The baby faces left the ring alone to Will Ospreay to kind of take it in. They leave this cage, and Ospreay is in the ring, and they're noting that he has a long road ahead of him, and they wish him all the best. His music plays, and then as he's about to leave the cage, Claudio runs at him with an uppercut. Moxley joins in, and they lock the door with the teammates having already left the cage area. He gets hit with 4 paradigm shifts. They place the chair around his neck, just as they did at All in Texas. The ops run down. Everyone's screaming to lift the cage, and they can't. And they proceed to have Moxley stomp the chair. And Excalibur says that we may have just witnessed the end of his career. But not just that. He then takes the severity level up a notch and says it could be life altering. And that's the end of Will Ospreay, the write-off. And I don't know how I felt about this. Like, I think it's kind of the tried and true method that, hey, if a guy's going to be going off, let's at least put some heat on some heels on the way out. I don't know how effective that necessarily is, because a lot of the times when these guys come back, it's like the characters have moved on and we sometimes don't even get to some of these programs, but they did it with the Death Riders. It did get a lot of heat in the building, and the announcers treated this a lot like the same way they destroyed Bryan Danielson last year at the end to write him out as well. So you have that kind of comparison with Will Ospreay. And yeah, they just... I mean, it was kind of the one thing where it's like, okay, we got it. He's got a neck injury, so we're going to deliver 4 paradigm shifts. Then we're going to stomp the neck. It's like, does everyone get it? He's got a bad neck. It felt like a very pro wrestling story. And I was kind of like Will Ospreay on this presentation. It was such a kind of, like they were presenting it, it's like this real story. And at the end, we're doing this like very pro wrestling style angle. So not to say it was bad, but, anyway, they wanted to get that for the Death Riders, so that's how it ended.
I personally felt like it was important for like Moxley and the Death Riders after losing the championship to Page, and in this case losing the match to here to get something back to reheat them up.
That's fair.
And attacking Will Ospreay in London in front of this crowd, I thought achieved that. I guess for me, I thought they could have done a better job of barricading the baby faces from being able to make it somehow, because the only thing keeping them away was Wheeler Yuta, and like with a kendo stick, like they had Yuta waiting at the bottom of the cage with the kendo stick to fend off the baby faces. And for a team of like 10 baby faces, or sorry, five plus like the three ops, I felt that was a little silly that they couldn't climb their way. And when we just saw Marina Shafir climb her way in like easily. So I wish they came up with a slightly better way of barricading it, but that might be a nitpick to some people.